They called for saviors, but Earth sent its monsters. The desperate call the sky above Velkara burned with colors that should never exist together. Orange and violet flames danced across the horizon as another district fell to the Draxic bombardment. Zira pressed her scaled hands against the observation window of the council chamber, watching her world die piece by piece. The glass was cold, almost as cold as the fear that had settled in her chest 3 months ago, when the Draxic collective first arrived. The Velkan had always been a peaceful species. For 12,000 cycles they had lived in harmony, building cities that sang with the wind, creating art that captured the very essence of light, and sharing knowledge freely with anyone who asked. They had no weapons, no armies, no concept of organized violence. Why would they? The galaxy had treaties. There were rules. Civilizations did not simply invade others without provocation. The Draxic collective had taught them how naive that belief was. Zira turned from the window as council leader Morvan spoke, his voice heavy with despair. The old Velkan's crest had dulled from vibrant blue to ash gray in just these few months. Around the circular chamber, the 12 council members sat in silence, their hope exhausted. "We have sent requests to 47 civilizations," Morvan said, his words echoing in the vast space. "The Taurian Empire expresses sympathy, but will not risk war with the Draxic. The Centauri Alliance has closed their borders. The Phylaxian Confederacy has offered to accept refugees, but only if we can reach their space. The others simply ignore our messages." Zira felt her secondary heart sink. She was not a council member, merely a xenolinguist who had been called to help communicate with potential allies. But in these desperate times, anyone with skills became essential. "There must be someone," said Council Member Thera, her voice cracking. "The Draxic have taken the southern continent. Our people are being processed in their harvesting facilities. They are turning our children into laborers and our adults into components for their machinery." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what happened in Draxic processing centers. The collective did not believe in waste. Every conquered species was utilized completely. Organic matter became fuel, bones became building materials, and minds were stripped for data before being discarded. Zira's terminal chimed softly. She glanced down, expecting another rejection, another polite refusal wrapped in diplomatic language. Instead, her eyes widened. "Council leader," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have a response." Morvan looked up, a flicker of something, perhaps hope, perhaps just reflex crossing his features. "From whom?" Zira checked the identification codes 3 times before answering. "From Earth, humanity." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Zira quickly pulled up the files. Earth was a newcomer to the galactic community, a small blue world on the outer rim that had only achieved faster than light travel 200 cycles ago. They were primitives by galactic standards, barely worthy of notice. "They must be mistaken," Council Member Vex said dismissively. "Humans are barely spacefaring. What could they possibly offer?" Zira read the message aloud, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "To the Velkan Council, we have received your distress call. We understand the Draxic Collective has invaded your world. We are prepared to render military assistance. Our fleet will arrive in 72 hours. Please prepare landing coordinates for ground forces." Message ends. "Military assistance?" Morvan leaned forward. "Do they even have a military?" Zira searched through the galactic database, pulling up what little information existed about humanity. What she found made her pause. Earth's history was documented, at least the parts they had shared with the galactic community. It was not the history of a peaceful species. "They have conflicts," she said slowly, reading the data. "Extensive conflicts. According to their own records, they have fought wars continuously throughout their existence. Major planetary wars, minor regional conflicts, civil wars, resource wars. They have weapons categories we do not have translations for." "Barbaric," Vex muttered. "We ask for saviors and receive savages." "Savages who answered when no one else would," Thera countered. "What choice do we have?" Morvan stood, his decision made. "Zira, send coordinates. Tell them we accept their assistance. We will hope that Earth's monsters can fight the Draxic monsters." The next 72 hours passed in agonizing slowness. The Draxic continued their advance, methodically consuming the planet. The Velkan military, such as it was, consisted of peacekeepers and emergency responders who had been armed with whatever they could find. They died bravely and uselessly against Draxic war machines. Zira spent those hours learning everything she could about humanity. The more she read, the more her concern grew. Humans were contradictions wrapped in flesh. They created beautiful art, then burned it in wars. They composed symphonies while simultaneously perfecting weapons of mass destruction. They had nearly destroyed themselves dozens of times, yet somehow always pulled back from the brink. They were predators who had climbed to the top of their world's food chain, then looked at the stars and decided to climb higher. They fought each other with a ferocity that had no equal in the galactic database, and yet they also showed capacity for incredible compassion. They were the only species on record who kept other species as companions simply because they enjoyed their company. When the human fleet arrived, Zira was on the orbital observation platform. She watched as reality tore open and ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. What came through made her breath catch. The human vessels were nothing like the elegant ships of other species. Where Velkan ships curved gracefully like shells and Taurian vessels gleamed like jewels, human ships looked like weapons themselves. They were angular, brutal things covered in armor plating and bristling with gun emplacements. Dark gray metal absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Each ship looked like it had been built for one purpose only: war. The flagship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the largest Velkan vessel. Along its hull, painted in stark white letters, was a name: USCS Indomitable. Behind it came a fleet of smaller warships, their formation tight and precise. "They are hailing us," the communications officer said, his voice shaking. "Put them through," Morvan ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, and Zira saw a human for the first time in person, rather than in database images. The woman who appeared was tall by Velkan standards, with skin the color of earth after rain, and dark hair pulled back severely from her face. She wore a uniform of deep blue with insignias Zira did not recognize. Her eyes were brown and hard, and when she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Systems Colonial Fleet. We are assuming defensive positions around Velkara. Prepare to receive ground forces." "Commander Chen," Morvan began, "we are grateful for your arrival, but we must understand. What will this cost us? What does Earth want in return?" Chen's expression did not change. "The Draxic Collective has been expanding unchecked for too long. They are a threat to civilized space. We are here to eliminate that threat. As for payment, we will discuss that after your people are safe." Before Morvan could respond, alarms blared across the station. A Draxic patrol fleet had detected the human arrival and was moving to intercept. 12 heavy warships, each one a proven killer that had carved through Velkan defenses like they were made of paper. Zira watched the tactical display, her hearts pounding. The Draxic ships were powerful, equipped with plasma cannons that could melt through most known armor. They moved in their standard formation, a configuration designed to provide maximum firepower coverage. The human response was immediate and shocking. The fleet split apart, ships accelerating at speeds that should have turned their crews into paste. They did not maintain formation. They scattered like a school of preyfish, except they were not fleeing. They were hunting. The first human ship, a vessel designated as a destroyer, came at the Draxic formation from below, a direction the collective ships rarely defended. It fired something, not energy weapons, but physical projectiles that moved at relativistic speeds. The rounds punched through the Draxic shields like they were not there and tore through the hull of the lead ship. The Draxic returned fire, plasma bolts lighting up space. They hit the human destroyer dead center. Zira expected the ship to explode or at least falter. Instead, it kept coming. The armor glowed white-hot but held. The ship fired again. More human vessels closed in, each one moving independently, each one attacking from different angles. They did not fight like any military force in the galactic database. There was no elegant strategy, no careful positioning. They fought like predators, like wolves bringing down prey too large for any single hunter. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, all 12 Draxic ships were debris, and the human fleet had not lost a single vessel. 3 were damaged, trailing atmosphere and displaying visible hull breaches, but they remained operational. Commander Chen's voice came through the communications channel again, calm as if she had just completed a routine patrol. "Velkara orbit is secure. Beginning ground operations. Council Leader Morvan. We will need information on Draxic ground positions, and civilian population centers. Zira looked at Morven. The council leader's crest had raised slightly, showing the first sign of hope she had seen in months. But in his eyes she saw something else. Fear. They had asked for saviors. Earth had sent something else entirely. Zira, Morvan said quietly, you will serve as liaison to the human forces. Learn what you can about them. We need to understand what we have brought to our world. She nodded, though every instinct screamed at her to refuse. The humans had just destroyed a Draxic fleet with terrifying efficiency. What would they do on the ground, where Velkan civilians were caught between two forces? The first dropships launched from the human fleet, burning through the atmosphere like falling stars. As they descended toward the largest Draxic-occupied city, Zira whispered a prayer to the old gods, asking for protection. Not from the Draxic. From their rescuers, the monsters had arrived. Understanding the beast, the human dropship shook violently as it cut through Velkara's atmosphere. Zira clutched the safety harness, her claws digging into the padded seat as the entire vessel rattled like it was coming apart. Across from her, 20 human soldiers sat calmly, checking their weapons and equipment as if they were not plummeting toward the surface at terminal velocity. She studied them carefully, trying to understand what she was seeing. Each soldier was encased in powered armor that added bulk to their already stocky frames. The armor was matte black, covered in scratches and dents that suggested it had seen extensive use. Their helmets completely covered their faces, turning them into faceless figures that looked more machine than organic. The soldier directly across from her noticed her staring. The helmet tilted slightly, and a voice came through, filtered and mechanical. First time in a combat drop. Zira's translator struggled with the casual tone, finally settling on an approximation. First time in any drop. We do not have military transports. Lucky you. The soldier reached up and disengaged his helmet seals. The face beneath was younger than Zira expected, with pale skin marked by a scar across the left cheek and bright blue eyes that seemed too cheerful for someone heading into battle. Name's Marcus Webb, Corporal, 2nd Platoon. You're the liaison, right? Zira. Yes, I'm assigned to observe and assist with communication. Marcus grinned, revealing flat teeth that marked humans as omnivores, predators who could consume almost anything. Observe, right. Well, you picked an interesting time to join us. We're hitting the Draxic Processing Center in Sector 7. Intel says they have about 2,000 Velkan civilians in there. You are going to rescue them. Hope flared in Zira's chest. The grin faded. We are going to try. But first, we have to go through whatever the Draxic have guarding the place. Could get messy. The dropship's engines screamed and the vessel lurched hard. Warning lights flashed red throughout the passenger compartment. A calm voice came over the intercom. 30 seconds to deployment. Enemy contact likely on landing. Lock and load. The soldiers moved as one, weapons coming up, power armor systems humming to life. Marcus slipped his helmet back on, transforming back into a faceless warrior. Stay behind me once we hit ground, he said, voice now filtered and cold. And if someone tells you to get down, you get down. No questions. The dropship slammed into the ground with bone-rattling force. The rear ramp dropped instantly, revealing a nightmare landscape. They had landed in what had once been a Velkan market district. Zira recognized the architecture, the flowing lines and open spaces designed for peaceful commerce. Now the buildings were scorched black, and Draxic machinery had converted the plaza into a fortified position. The humans moved before the ramp fully deployed. They poured out in a controlled flood, spreading across the landing zone with practiced efficiency. Zira stumbled down the ramp after them, her legs shaking. The Draxic opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts screamed across the plaza, superheated death that could vaporize flesh and melt steel. Zira froze, terror overwhelming her. She was going to die here, cut down in the first seconds of combat. A heavy impact knocked her to the ground. Marcus had tackled her, his armored body covering hers as plasma fire burned the air above them. Told you to stay down, he said, no reproach in his voice. Just matter-of-fact observation. Then the humans returned fire, and Zira understood why the galaxy should fear them. Their weapons made sounds like thunder, rapid explosive bursts that echoed off the ruined buildings. But it was not the noise that shocked her. It was how they fought. The humans did not take cover and engage in careful exchanges like civilized warfare. They advanced, They moved through the plasma fire like it was rain, their armor absorbing hits that should have been lethal. When a bolt struck one soldier square in the chest, he staggered, smoke rising from the impact point, then kept moving forward. They fired as they advanced, their weapons spitting metal projectiles that tore through Draxic cover, a Draxic war machine. A bipedal combat unit, armed with heavy plasma cannons, emerged from behind a collapsed building. It stood 3 times the height of a human, armored in composite plates that could withstand orbital bombardment. Zira had seen one of these machines destroy an entire Velkan defensive position by itself. The humans did not retreat. 3 of them turned toward it, and one pulled a weapon from their back, a tube-like device. Fire erupted from one end, and a projectile streaked toward the war machine. It struck the machine's center mass and exploded with devastating force. The machine stumbled, armor cracked and burning. Before it could recover, the other humans were on it. They swarmed the damaged machine like insects, attaching devices to its legs and torso. They retreated, and a second later, synchronized explosions tore the war machine apart from the inside. The massive construct collapsed, its reactor core exposed and sparking. The entire engagement lasted less than 3 minutes. When the gunfire stopped, the plaza was secure and the humans had not lost a single soldier. 2 were wounded, their armor breached and bleeding, but they were still standing, still ready to fight. Marcus helped Zira to her feet. "You okay?" She could not speak. Her vocal cords refused to work. She simply nodded. "Good, stay close. We are moving into the facility." The processing center was a horror that would haunt Zira for the rest of her life. The Draxic had converted a Velkan cultural museum into their harvesting operation. Conveyor systems moved through halls that had once displayed ancient art. The Velkan prisoners were being sorted, analyzed and prepared for processing. The humans moved through the facility like avenging spirits. They cleared room after room with brutal efficiency. When they encountered Draxic guards, there was no hesitation, no mercy. The humans killed with professional detachment, their weapons precise and devastating. But when they found the prisoners, everything changed. Zira watched as Marcus knelt beside a young Velkan child, a female no more than 6 cycles old, who had been separated from her parents. The little one was terrified, her crest flat against her skull, her eyes wide with shock. Marcus removed his helmet, revealing his human face, and spoke softly. "Hey there, little one. It's okay. We are here to help. Can you tell me your name?" The child stared at him, seeing an alien creature covered in blood and smelling of combat. She should have been more terrified. Instead, something in Marcus's voice, in his gentle tone, made her respond. "Lyra," she whispered. "That's a beautiful name. Lyra, I am going to pick you up and we are going to find your parents. Is that okay?" The child nodded, and Marcus lifted her carefully, cradling her against his armored chest. He looked at Zira. "Can you check the registry? Find out where her family is." Zira accessed the facility's database, her hands shaking as she navigated the Draxic systems. "Her parents are in processing Bay 3. They are still alive. Then let's go get them." They found Lyra's parents strapped to processing tables, sedated and prepared for harvesting. The humans freed them, deactivating the Draxic restraints and administering counteragents to the sedatives. When Lyra's mother woke and saw her daughter safe in the arms of an armored alien, she broke down sobbing. This scene repeated throughout the facility. The humans cleared every room, freed every prisoner, and showed a tenderness toward the Velkan that seemed impossible for creatures who had just slaughtered their way through fortified positions. Later, as the rescued civilians were being loaded onto evacuation transports, Zira found Commander Chen standing at the edge of the landing zone, watching the operations. The commander's armor was scorched and damaged, and she had removed her helmet, revealing a face lined with exhaustion. "You fight like demons," Zira said, approaching carefully. "But you care for civilians like angels. I do not understand." Chen turned to look at her, those hard brown eyes studying Zira for a long moment. "Do you know what humans are, Zira?" "I mean, really, no. You are warriors, predators. Your history is filled with violence." "True, but that is not all we are." Chen gestured toward the evacuation transports where human soldiers were helping Velkan children aboard, their weapons slung but ready. Humans evolved on a death world. Everything on Earth wanted to kill us. The predators, the diseases, the weather, even other humans. We learned to fight because we had to. We got very good at killing because survival demanded it." She paused, watching as Marcus handed Lyra to her parents, the little girl clutching a ration bar the soldier had given her. "But we also learned something else. We learned that alone we die. Together we survive. We form tribes, communities, nations. We protect our own with everything we have. And once we decide someone is worth protecting, we do not stop. We cannot stop. It is wired into us at the genetic level." "The Velkan are not your people," Zira said softly. "No," Chen agreed. "But you asked for help. That makes you our responsibility. The Draxic hurt you. That makes them our enemy. It is very simple from a human perspective. And when this is over, when the Draxic are defeated, what then?" Chen's expression hardened. "If the Draxic are defeated, do not mistake what is happening here, Zira. We won one battle, rescued some civilians. The Draxic Collective controls 100 worlds. They have resources we cannot match, and military forces that dwarf our fleet. They will respond to this setback, and when they do, it will be with overwhelming force. Then why come at all? Why risk your people for ours?" The commander was silent for a long moment, staring up at the sky where human warships maintained their vigil. "Because someone has to. The galaxy is full of civilizations like yours. Peaceful, advanced, cultured. You build beautiful things and create art and advance science. But when predators come, you have no defense. You die, and the galaxy loses something precious." She looked back at Zira, and for the first time the xenolinguist saw past the hard military exterior to something else beneath. "Humans are not like you. We are violent, aggressive, sometimes cruel. We carry the weight of thousands of years of warfare in our DNA. We cannot unlearn it. But we can choose what we do with it. We can be the monsters who protect those who cannot protect themselves." An alarm sounded across the landing zone. An officer ran up to Chen, saluting quickly. "Commander, orbital sensors are picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Draxic reinforcements are incoming. Estimated arrival 4 hours. Chen's expression did not change. She simply nodded. "Prepare defensive positions. Get all civilians off planet and to the refugee ships. Contact Fleet Command. Tell Admiral Kowalski we will need the full battle group." The officer saluted and ran off. Chen turned back to Zira. "You should evacuate with the civilians. Things are about to get much worse." "No," Zira said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "I am liaison. My place is with your forces. I will stay." Chen studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. A slight smile crossed her face, the first real expression of warmth Zira had seen from her. "Then welcome to the war, Zira. Try to keep up." As the human forces prepared for the coming battle, Zira looked at the soldiers around her. They checked their weapons, reinforced positions, and prepared to face an enemy that outnumbered them significantly. None of them looked afraid. They looked determined. She had called for saviors. Earth had sent monsters. But maybe, she thought, watching Marcus play a simple hand game with little Lyra before her evacuation, monsters were what the galaxy needed, the turning point. The Draxic response fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like an avalanche of steel and fury. Zira watched from the command center as the orbital sensors painted the tactical display with hostile contacts. 47 capital ships, over 100 support vessels, and an uncountable number of fighter craft. The Draxic Collective was not sending a patrol fleet. They were sending an extermination force. "Well," Admiral Kowalski said, studying the display with calm eyes, "they are certainly committed." The Admiral was an older human, his hair gone grey and his face lined with decades of service. He stood at the center of the command deck, aboard the USCS Indomitable, surrounded by officers working at their stations with focused intensity. Zira had been granted access to observe, though she felt utterly useless in this environment built for war. "Admiral, they outnumber us 4-1, said the tactical officer, a young woman whose voice remained steady despite the odds. "Recommend we withdraw to defensive positions around the colony fleet." "Negative," Kowalski said. "If we fall back, they will pursue and engage us with the civilian ships in the crossfire. We hold here." He turned to the communications station. "Signal all ships. Battle formation Delta. Prepare firing solutions on their lead elements." Zira watched as the human fleet reorganized. They had only 12 capital ships against the Draxic 47, but they moved with confidence, taking positions that seemed suicidal. They were spacing themselves widely, refusing the traditional defensive sphere that would concentrate their firepower. "Admiral," Zira ventured, her voice small in the massive command center, "should you not group together? Create a unified defensive front." Kowalski glanced at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her secondary heart skip. It was not fear or concern. It was anticipation. "That is how you fight a defensive battle, Zira. We are not fighting defensively." Before she could process what that meant, the Draxic fleet opened fire. Space lit up with plasma bolts and particle beams, a wave of destruction that should have annihilated the scattered human vessels. The human ships accelerated, their engines flaring as they moved not away from the attack but toward it. They did not dodge the incoming fire. They flew through it. Zira watched in horror as the human flagship took a direct hit from a plasma cannon that could crack a planet's crust. The shields flared, blazing with absorbed energy, and held. The Indomitable kept coming, and as it closed the distance, it fired. The human weapons were different from anything Zira had seen. They launched swarms of small missiles that moved with their own intelligence, weaving through space to find targets. They fired magnetically accelerated projectiles that hit with kinetic force measured in megatons. And they used beam weapons that did not burn through shields gradually, but punched through them like a hammer through glass. The Draxic lead ship, a massive dreadnought that had destroyed civilizations, took the full brunt of the Indomitable's broadside. Explosions rippled across its hull, armor plating vaporizing, entire sections decompressing into space. The dreadnought tried to return fire, but the human flagship was already past it, moving deeper into the Draxic formation. "Wolves among sheep," Admiral Kowalski murmured, watching the tactical display. "All ships engage at will. Remember your training. Keep moving, stay aggressive, make them react to us." The battle that followed defied everything Zira understood about space warfare. The humans did not fight like a fleet. They fought like a pack of predators, each ship moving independently but in perfect coordination. They isolated Draxic vessels, overwhelming them with concentrated fire, then moved to the next target before the enemy could respond. A Draxic carrier launched its fighter screen, hundreds of small craft swarming toward the human fleet. The human response was immediate. Point defense systems activated, creating walls of flak that shredded through the fighters. Human interceptors launched, smaller and faster than their Draxic counterparts, and tore into the formation with ruthless efficiency, but the humans were still outnumbered. A destroyer took multiple hits, its armor finally failing and atmosphere vented into space. Zira watched the ship go dark on the tactical display, her throat tight. 23 human crew aboard that vessel, dead in an instant. USCS Relentless has been destroyed, the tactical officer reported, her voice tight with controlled emotion. USCS Endeavour has taken critical damage and is withdrawing from the line. Kowalski's expression did not change. Acknowledged. Redirect Squadron 3 to cover Endeavour's withdrawal. All remaining ships press the attack. The battle raged for 3 hours. The humans fought with a ferocity that bordered on suicidal, trading ships for kills at a ratio that should have been unsustainable. But slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The Draxic fleet, built on the assumption of their own superiority, had no doctrine for fighting an enemy that refused to be intimidated. When a human ship was disabled, its crew did not surrender. They overloaded their reactors and rammed the nearest Draxic vessel, turning themselves into weapons. When ammunition ran low, they used their ships as battering rams, armor-reinforced prows smashing into enemy hulls. Zira watched a human cruiser, the USCS Defiant, with all weapons destroyed and engines failing, execute one final maneuver. It accelerated directly into a Draxic command ship, colliding at relativistic speeds. The explosion was visible even from Velkara's surface, a new star born and dying in seconds. Both ships were annihilated, along with the Draxic flag officer, who had commanded the invasion of 3 worlds. "The Draxic fleet is breaking formation," the tactical officer reported, and Zira heard the disbelief in her voice. "They are withdrawing." The command center erupted in subdued cheers. Officers remained at their stations, but relief was palpable. The Draxic Collective, the unstoppable empire that had conquered 100 worlds, was retreating from a human fleet 1/4 their size. Admiral Kowalski allowed himself a small smile. "Signal all ships. Pursue the enemy, but do not overextend. Maintain defensive coverage on the civilian evacuation. Hand someone get me damage reports and casualty numbers. Zira approached the Admiral as the command staff worked through post-battle procedures. You knew, she said softly. You knew you could win. I knew we had a chance, Kowalski corrected. War is never certain, but yes, I believed we could hurt them enough to make them reconsider. The Draxic are bullies. They are used to fighting species that cannot effectively fight back. When you punch a bully in the mouth hard enough, they often discover they have somewhere else to be. I lost 4 ships, over 300 crew. The Admiral's expression hardened, the brief moment of triumph fading. I know. I knew every captain, served with most of them. Captain Rodriguez on the Relentless had 3 children. Commander Park on the Defiant was 2 months from retirement. I will write letters to their families tonight, and I will carry their deaths with me for the rest of my life. He turned to look directly at Zira. That is the cost of war. That is what humans pay to protect others. We do not do this because it is easy or because we enjoy it. We do it because it is necessary, because species like yours deserve to live in peace, and someone has to stand between you and those who would take that peace away. On the planet's surface, the human ground forces had used the orbital battle as cover to launch a coordinated assault on all remaining Draxic positions. Commander Chen led the main attack on the primary processing facility, a massive complex where tens of thousands of Velkin were held. Zira watched the operation through data feeds, helpless to do anything but observe as human soldiers fought through fortified positions. The Draxic, aware that their fleet was losing, fought with desperate fury. They turned the facility into a killing ground, using the Velkin prisoners as shields. Chen's response was immediate and uncompromising. Human sniper teams, positioned in buildings surrounding the complex, began targeting Draxic officers with precision fire. Combat engineers blew holes in the facility walls, creating new entrance points that bypassed the main defenses. And assault teams went in, clearing rooms one by one with methodical violence. Marcus and his platoon were part of the assault. Zira listened to their radio communications, hearing the controlled chaos of urban combat. Explosions, gunfire, shouted orders and screams. Through it all, Marcus's voice remained steady, directing his team, calling targets, checking on his soldiers. Civilian group located in Sector 7, Marcus reported. Approximately 200 individuals, mixed ages. They are in bad shape. We need medical evac now. Negative on evac, came Chen's response. All transports are engaged. You will have to hold position and stabilize the wounded. Understood. Digging in. For 6 hours, Marcus and his platoon held that position, defending the rescued civilians against Draxic counterattacks. They fought from a room designed to display Velkin historical artifacts, using ancient display, cases as cover, and creating defensive positions among shattered sculptures. The Draxic threw wave after wave of soldiers at them, determined to recapture or eliminate the prisoners. The humans did not break. When ammunition ran low, they scavenged from dead enemies. When one soldier was wounded, another took his position. They created a perimeter around the civilians and defended it with absolute determination. Zira downloaded footage from Marcus's helmet camera later, when the battle was over. She watched as he moved through the defensive position, checking on his soldiers, offering encouragement, redistributing ammunition. At one point, a young Velkin child approached him, crying for her mother who had been separated during the evacuation. Marcus knelt down, despite the ongoing battle, and spoke to the child. Hey, it's okay. We are going to find your mother. But right now I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? Can you help the other kids stay calm? The child nodded, tears still streaming down her face. Marcus reached into his pack and pulled out a small chocolate bar, something from Earth that he had been saving. Here, share this with the others, and remember, I promise we will get you to your mother. He kept that promise. When the facility was finally secured and evacuation transports arrived, Marcus personally ensured every child was reunited with their family. The little girl's mother had been in another section of the complex, badly injured but alive. When they were reunited, the mother looked at Marcus with an expression Zira would never forget. It was gratitude, yes, but also something deeper. Recognition. She saw past the armor and weapons to the person beneath, the human who had protected her child with his own life. The battle for Velkara ended after 8 days of continuous combat. The Draxic collective withdrew completely, abandoning their occupation and retreating to their own territory. They left behind their processing facilities, their equipment, and over 60,000 Velkan prisoners who were freed by human forces. The humans also left things behind. 4 ships destroyed in orbit, their crews buried in the cold vacuum. 147 soldiers who fell in ground combat, their bodies recovered and prepared for military honors, and scattered across the planet, small tokens of their presence, ration bars shared with hungry children, medical supplies distributed to the wounded, and memories of armored figures who fought like demons but cared like angels. Zira stood in the central plaza of Velkara's capital as the human forces prepared to depart. Commander Chen was loading the last of her equipment when Zira approached. "You are leaving?" Zira asked, though she knew the answer. "Our mission is complete. Your world is secure. We have other places to be, other species that need protection." Chen paused, looking at the city around them. Velkan were already beginning reconstruction, clearing rubble, rebuilding what had been destroyed. "You have good people here. Resilient. You will recover. Because of you. Because Earth sent help when no one else would." Chen smiled slightly. "Because you asked. That is important, Zira. You reached out across the stars and asked for help. Not every species has that courage. And not every species answers. The galaxy will remember what humans did here." "Maybe." Chen shouldered her pack, preparing to board the transport. "Or maybe they will forget, and the next time someone needs help, they will hesitate to call us because we are monsters. Either way, we will keep doing what we do. It is who we are." Zira watched the transport lift off, carrying Chen and her soldiers back to their ships. Around the plaza, other transports were departing, taking the human forces away. In a few hours, the fleet would leave orbit, and Velkara would be alone again. But not the same as before. The world had been changed, its people changed, by the arrival of Earth's monsters. Victory and understanding. 3 months after the liberation of Velkara, Zira stood in the Galactic Council chamber on the neutral station of Concordia Prime. The vast circular room held representatives from 43 species, each seated in sections designed for their particular biology. The Velkan delegation sat in the outer ring, observers rather than full members, but their presence here was unprecedented. Council Speaker Davron, a Taurian with silver scales and cold reptilian eyes, addressed the assembly. "We have convened to discuss the situation regarding the human intervention in the Velkara conflict. The Draxic Collective has lodged a formal complaint, claiming the humans violated several treaties regarding military action in disputed space." Zira felt her crest flatten with anger. Disputed space, as if the Draxic had any legitimate claim to Velkara beyond conquest and slaughter. "The humans acted with extreme prejudice," continued a Phylaxian representative, their translator converting their chemical signals into audible speech. "They destroyed Draxic vessels that attempted to surrender. They showed no mercy in ground combat. This behavior is concerning." "Concerning?" Council Leader Morvan stood, his voice carrying across the chamber. "What is concerning is that 43 civilizations sat idle while my people were harvested. We sent requests to every member of this council. We begged for help. You offered sympathy and silence." "The Draxic Collective is a powerful force," Speaker Davron said smoothly. "Direct military confrontation would have escalated into a larger conflict, endangering the stability of the entire region." "So you would have let us die to preserve your precious stability?" Morvan's voice shook with barely contained rage. "The humans came, they fought, they bled for people they had never met, asking nothing in return. And now you sit in judgment of them?" The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, species arguing with each other, accusations and counter-accusations filling the air. Zira tuned it out, her mind drifting back to the previous weeks. After the battle, she had continued her role as liaison, helping coordinate the reconstruction efforts and managing the interface between Velkan civilians and the human military advisors who had stayed behind. She had gotten to know many of them beyond their armor and weapons. She had learned that Marcus collected poetry from Earth and often read it to the children in the refugee centers, that Commander Chen painted watercolors in her sparse free time, creating delicate images of flowers that seemed impossible from hands that had commanded such violence. That Admiral Kowalski had lost his own family to a raid by space pirates years ago, and his fierce protection of others came from a place of deep personal pain. They were not monsters, they were people. Complicated, contradictory, sometimes brutal people, but people nonetheless. They carried darkness within them, yes, but also light. They had the capacity for terrible violence and profound compassion, often in the same moment. A new voice cut through the chaos of the council chamber. Perhaps we should ask the humans themselves to explain their actions. Zira looked up, startled. In the gallery above, previously empty, stood Ambassador Elizabeth Okonkwo, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. She was an imposing woman, tall and dark-skinned, wearing formal diplomatic attire rather than a military uniform. Behind her stood two human guards, their presence a subtle reminder that Earth came to even peaceful forums prepared for violence. Speaker Davron's expression tightened. Ambassador Okonkwo, your presence was not expected, yet here I am. Okonkwo descended to the main floor with measured steps, her bearing diplomatic but unyielding. I understand this council is discussing humanity's role in the Velkara liberation. I thought it appropriate to attend. Liberation, a Centauri representative scoffed. You call it liberation. The Draxic call it unprovoked military aggression. The Draxic would call the Sunrise aggression if it interfered with their conquests, Okonkwo replied calmly. Let us speak plainly. This council knew what was happening on Velkara. You received the same distress calls we did. You chose not to respond. Earth chose differently. Earth acted recklessly, Speaker Davron said. You engaged in military action without consulting this council, without attempting diplomatic solutions, without considering the broader implications. Okonkwo's smile was cold. We attempted diplomacy for 6 years, while the Draxic expanded unchecked. We watched them conquer 12 worlds, while this council debated and discussed and ultimately did nothing. How many more civilizations should we have let them destroy while waiting for you to find your courage? The chamber fell silent. No one had ever spoken to the council with such direct contempt. Zira felt a surge of satisfaction watching the representatives who had abandoned her people squirm under the ambassador's words. The problem, Okonkwo continued, walking slowly around the chamber floor, is that this council has forgotten what it means to face real threats. You have all achieved peace within your own territories through the luxury of distance from danger. You build beautiful civilizations, advance your sciences, create magnificent art. And when predators come for those who cannot defend themselves, you offer condolences and hope they consume others before reaching you. That is unfair, a Taurian elder protested. We maintain peace through diplomacy, through understanding, through allowing strong predators to feed on weak prey, Okonkwo interrupted. You maintain your peace by sacrificing species like the Velkan. You call it pragmatism. We call it cowardice. How dare you? Several representatives rose, their protests overlapping. Okonkwo's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Humanity dares because we remember what it means to be prey. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We fought each other for resources, for territory, for survival. We know what it means to face extinction and claw your way back from the edge. That experience taught us something this council has forgotten. The strong have a responsibility to protect the weak, not because it is profitable, not because it is safe, but because it is right. She stopped in front of the Velkan delegation, looking directly at Morvan and Zira. When the Velkan called for help, they did not call for diplomats or mediators. They called for warriors. They needed someone willing to fight, to bleed, to die if necessary. Earth answered that call because we understand that some threats cannot be negotiated with. They can only be defeated. Speaker Davron stood, his voice carrying authority. And what happens when Earth decides another species is a threat? What happens when humanity's capacity for violence is turned against those you currently call allies? You ask us to trust warriors who admit they are monsters. We never said we were monsters, Okonkwo replied quietly. That is what others call us because they fear what they do not understand. Yes, humans are capable of terrible violence. Our history is written in blood. But that same history taught us the value of mercy, the importance of protecting those who cannot protect themselves, the necessity of standing against tyranny, even when it is dangerous to do so. She turned to address the entire council. You want to know what humanity is? We are the species that climbed from the food chain's bottom to its top. We are the ones who looked at the vast emptiness of space and decided we belonged there. We are the people who will cross the galaxy to help strangers, because they asked. And yes, we are the warriors who will destroy anyone who threatens those we have pledged to protect. We are contradictions. We are poets and soldiers, artists and destroyers, philosophers and killers. We contain multitudes and we do not apologize for it. The galaxy can accept us as we are or fear us as monsters. Either way, we will continue doing what we believe is right. The chamber was silent. Zira saw representatives exchanging glances, some with fear, others with what might have been respect, and a few with calculation, already considering how to use Earth's military might for their own purposes. The Council will take your statement under advisement, Speaker Davron said finally. However, we cannot condone unilateral military action. If Earth continues such interventions without Council approval, you will do what exactly? Okonkwo asked. Sanction us? Isolate us? We did not join the galactic community to seek approval for defending the innocent. We came to the stars to explore, to learn, to find others who shared our values. If this Council's values include allowing species to be exterminated while you debate appropriate response protocols, then perhaps we should reconsider our membership. She turned and began walking toward the exit. Earth will continue to respond to distress calls from species under attack. We will continue to fight those who would enslave and slaughter the innocent, and we will continue to do so with or without the Council's blessing. You can work with us or you can stand aside. But we will not stand idle. The ambassador left, her guards following. The chamber erupted in chaos, representatives arguing, demanding responses, calling for sanctions or support or further discussion. Zira watched it all with a strange sense of detachment. Later, she found Ambassador Okonkwo in one of the station's observation lounges, looking out at the stars. The ambassador did not turn when Zira approached. That was quite a speech, Zira said softly. It needed to be said. Okonkwo's reflection in the transparent aluminum showed a tired woman, the diplomatic mask fallen away. They needed to hear that humanity will not be controlled or directed like some convenient weapon they can deploy when it suits them. You made enemies today. We had those enemies already. They just did not realize it yet. Okonkwo finally turned, studying Zira with sharp eyes. How are your people recovering? Slowly. The physical damage will take years to repair. The psychological damage, perhaps generations. Zira moved to stand beside the ambassador, looking out at the infinite darkness. But we are alive. We have a future because of what your people did. Your people had a future because you fought for it. We just helped. You did more than help. You showed the galaxy what real courage looks like. Zira hesitated, then asked the question that had haunted her since the battle. Why? Why do humans risk so much for others? You lost hundreds of people saving a species you barely knew. What drives that? Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what the first thing humans did when we reached space was? Explored? We looked back. We turned our ships around and looked at Earth from orbit. We saw our world, small and blue and fragile, hanging in the void. We saw how isolated we were, how alone, and we realized that if something had happened to us, if some catastrophe had wiped us out, the universe would not have noticed. We would have vanished without a trace, and no one would have mourned us because no one would have known we existed. The ambassador's expression softened. That thought terrified us. The idea that we could be erased from existence and leave nothing behind, help no one, matter to no one. So we made a choice. If we found others out here in the darkness, others struggling to survive like we had struggled, we would help them. We would matter. We would make sure that no species faced extinction alone, even if it costs you, especially if it costs us. That is what gives it meaning. Okonkwo turned to face Zira fully. You asked earlier why humans fight so hard for others. It is because every species we save proves we matter. Every civilization we protect justifies our existence. Every child we keep safe means humanity's violence serves a purpose beyond just destruction. We are trying to be worthy of the gift of existence. And if that requires us to be monsters in war so others can live in peace, then we will bear that burden. Zira felt tears forming in her eyes. The galaxy does not deserve you. Perhaps not. But the galaxy has us anyway. Okonkwo smiled slightly. Come, let us return to your delegation. I suspect the Council will want to continue these discussions, and your voice matters more than mine. You are the ones who experienced both the Draxic cruelty and the human response. Your testimony will carry weight. They walked together back toward the Council chambers. As they moved through the station's corridors, Zira noticed how other species reacted to Ambassador Okonkwo's presence. Some stepped aside nervously. Others watched with calculating eyes. A few, mostly representatives from smaller species without strong militaries, watched with something like hope. The debate continued for another week. The Galactic Council ultimately passed a resolution acknowledging humanity's intervention in the Velkara conflict, but strongly encouraging future coordination with Council authorities. It was a meaningless document, satisfying no one, changing nothing, but something else changed. In the months following the liberation, 17 other species sent quiet communications to Earth. Not formal requests, not official petitions, just questions. What would it take for Earth to respond to a distress call? What kinds of threats would motivate human intervention? Could defensive pacts be arranged? The galaxy was learning a new lesson. There was a species willing to fight for others, willing to bleed for strangers, willing to stand against tyranny even when it was dangerous. And slowly, carefully, the prey species of the galaxy began to realize they had found unexpected protectors. 6 months after the Battle of Velkara, Zira received a message from Marcus. He was stationed on another world now, helping another species rebuild after another conflict. His message was brief, written in the casual style she had learned was common for humans. Hey Zira, hope things are going well on Velkara. We've finished up here and are heading to our next assignment. Some pirates have been hitting trade routes near the outer colonies, and the locals asked for help. Same story, different sector. Anyway, I wanted to let you know that Lyra, that kid from the processing center, she drew a picture for me. Her mom sent it. It shows a human soldier with a Velkan child, both of them smiling. She titled it, "The Day the Monsters Saved Us. I have it hung in my quarters. Reminds me why we do this. Stay safe out there, Marcus." Attached to the message was an image of the drawing. Zira looked at it for a long time, studying the simple crayon sketch that captured something profound. A child's understanding of what had happened, unfiltered by politics or fear. Monsters who saved them. She composed a response carefully. "Marcus, thank you for sharing this. Lyra is doing well, as are most of the children. They speak of the human soldiers often with admiration and affection. You asked me once if I believed humans were monsters. I have thought about that question extensively. My answer is this. You are what you choose to be. Humans chose to be our salvation. That choice matters more than any label the galaxy might apply. Be safe in your next mission. And thank you for everything, Zira." She sent the message and returned to her work. There was much to do. Velkara was rebuilding, and the galaxy was changing. Fear and hope existed in equal measure. Uncertainty about what humanity's presence meant for the established order. But Zira knew one thing with absolute certainty. When the next species called for help, when the next distress signal went out across the void, Earth would answer. They would send their ships, their soldiers, their monsters who fought like demons and cared like angels, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the command center of the USCS Indomitable, now stationed at the edge of human space, Admiral Kowalski reviewed reports from a dozen different sectors. Intelligence indicated the Draxic Collective was rebuilding, planning retaliation for their defeat at Velkara. Other powers were watching humanity with increasing interest, some hostile, some calculating, some hopeful. His communications officer approached. "Admiral, we are receiving multiple distress calls. A mining colony in the Kepler sector is under attack by raiders. A diplomatic vessel near the Arcturus system has been captured by pirates. And there is a general distress signal from a species called the Narvani. They are being invaded by someone called the Krelnor Dominion." Kowalski studied the tactical display, measuring distances, calculating response times, assessing priorities. His fleet was already stretched thin. covering too much space with too few ships. They could not respond to everything. Choices would have to be made. Dispatch the 3rd Squadron to Kepler Sector. Contact the Centauri Alliance about the diplomatic vessel. It is in their territory and they should handle it. And plot a course for the Narvani homeworld. He looked at his crew, seeing the exhaustion in their faces, knowing what he was asking of them. Looks like we have work to do. The crew moved to their tasks without complaint. This was what they did. This was who they were. Earth's warriors, humanity's monsters, the ones who stood between the innocent and those who would harm them. The Indomitable's engines flared, and the great warship turned toward its next mission. Behind it, the human fleet followed, ready once again to answer a call for help from strangers they had never met. They had been called saviors. They had been called monsters. The truth was they were simply human. And for species throughout the galaxy who found themselves prey to predators, that was enough. In the darkness of space, in the infinite void between stars, humanity had found its purpose. Not as conquerors or explorers or diplomats, but as protectors. Flawed, violent, contradictory protectors, but protectors nonetheless. The galaxy had asked for salvation. Earth had sent what it had. Warriors who knew the cost of peace because they had paid it themselves. Soldiers who understood the value of life because they had seen so much death. Monsters who chose to fight for others because they remembered what it meant to stand alone against the darkness. And across the stars, in 1,000 different languages, a new prayer was being whispered by those who lived in fear of predators. Let the humans come. Let Earth's monsters find us. For in a galaxy full of civilizations that had forgotten how to fight, humanity remembered. And they would not let others suffer what they had overcome. They would stand. They would fight. They would protect, because that was what monsters did when they chose to be heroes. If you're ready to see Earth's terrifying monsters unleashed, hit that like button. Comment below and tell us, how do you think humanity's vengeance will reshape the galaxy? Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of the action. Earth's monsters are only getting started, and you won't want to miss what happens next in this epic HFY story. Comment for next part.